The text came in on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the middle of reseeding the back lawn. I had my phone in my shirt pocket the way I always do since my wife passed, not because I expect anyone to call, but because the silence of the house has a way of following you outside if you're not careful. I felt it buzz. I pulled it out, squinted at the screen in the sunlight. It was from my son. "Dad, Renata and I have been talking. We love you, but we need you to respect our space. Please don't stop by without scheduling it first. We need our home to feel like our home. We want peace." I read it twice, then a third time. I stood there holding the phone with dirt on my gloves and the sprinkler running somewhere behind me, and I didn't say anything out loud because there was no one to say anything to. I just slipped the phone back into my pocket, picked up the bag of grass seed, and kept walking. That's the thing about getting older that nobody tells you. The hurt doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in, slow, the way cold air comes through a poorly sealed window in January. You don't notice it until you're already shivering. My son's name is Kieran. He's 36 years old. He works in commercial real estate in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he moved about 8 years ago with a woman named Renata, who he eventually married. They have a daughter, my granddaughter, Poppy, who just turned 5 in March and already has opinions about which color crayon is the most important. I raised Kieran by myself after his mother, Diane, died of ovarian cancer when he was 11. I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want it to sound like I'm asking for credit. I'm not. Plenty of people raise kids alone and they don't go around expecting a medal, but I do want you to understand the context of what I'm about to tell you, because context matters. I was a structural engineer for 31 years. I worked for a firm in Raleigh, long hours, travel, the whole thing. When Diane got sick, I scaled back. When she died, I scaled back further. I passed on 2 promotions in the 5 years after her death because Kieran needed consistency. He needed someone to be at the kitchen table when he got home from school. He needed someone at his baseball games on Saturday mornings. I made the choice that he came first, and I made that choice without resentment, and I would make it again. Kieran was a good kid, quiet, thoughtful. He had his mother's way of pausing before he spoke, as though he was checking his words at the door before letting them out. He worked part-time through high school, saved his own money for a used car at 17, graduated in the top quarter of his class. I was proud of him. I still am. In the complicated way you can be proud of someone who has also hurt you. I helped him with college. Not all of it. He had a partial academic scholarship, and he took out loans for the rest. But I contributed what I could each semester, somewhere around $800 to $1,000 a month for 4 years. After graduation, he moved to Charlotte for a job opportunity. And for the first 2 years, things were fine. We talked on the phone on Sundays. He visited at Thanksgiving. He seemed to be finding his footing. Then he met Renata. I want to be fair. Renata is not a bad person. She's sharp, organized, driven, the kind of woman who has a 5-year plan laminated somewhere. What she is, I would eventually understand, is someone who views the world in terms of territories, her house, her schedule, her husband, and anything that didn't originate within those borders was, by definition, an intrusion. The first sign was small. About 6 months after they started dating, Kieran stopped calling on Sundays. Not completely, but the calls got shorter, less frequent. When I mentioned it, he said he'd been busy. I let it go. A man in a new relationship is busy. That's normal. The second sign was the holidays. The first Thanksgiving after they got engaged. He told me they were going to Renata's parents in Savannah. I said of course and meant it. But it became every Thanksgiving, and then alternating Christmases became Renata's family's Christmas with me getting a video call on the 26th. I didn't make a scene, that's not who I am. I adjusted. What I didn't fully register, not until much later, was the pattern underneath the individual incidents. Each year the distance increased. Each year the access narrowed, and each year I kept adjusting. Kept making myself smaller. Kept telling myself that this was just how adult children were. That I needed to respect their independence. That I shouldn't be one of those fathers who didn't know when to let go. But here's what I also did, because I thought I was helping. When Kieran and Renata bought their house in 2021, I contributed $30,000 to their down payment. I had the money saved, not a fortune, but a meaningful amount, and Kieran mentioned they were short. I didn't hesitate. When their furnace failed that first winter, I wrote a check for the repair. When Renata's car needed a new transmission the following spring, I helped cover half of it. Small things. Large things. I didn't track them. That's not what you do for family. What I understand now, looking back, is that I was funding a life that had very little room for me in it. I was paying rent in a house where I wasn't welcome to visit without an appointment. After the text, I didn't respond right away. I went back inside, washed my hands, made a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table where Kieran used to do his homework. The afternoon light came through the window the same way it always has. The house was quiet. I thought about what the message actually said. We want peace. As though my presence, my phone calls, my occasional visits, the way I would sometimes stop by with a bag of fresh peaches from the orchard down the road, was a disruption to something. As though I was the problem to be solved. I thought about Poppy. About the last time I'd seen her, 4 months earlier, when I drove the 3 hours down to Charlotte specifically because Renata had said in a group text that Poppy kept asking about me. I brought her a stuffed elephant. We sat in the living room and she showed me every toy she owned, one by one, with the patient thoroughness of a museum curator. It was one of the best afternoons I'd had in years. I thought about whether Renata had written the text or whether Kieran had. I thought about whether it mattered. Then I did something I want to explain carefully, because I don't want it to be misunderstood. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it out of clarity. I called my financial advisor, a man named Paul who I've worked with for 12 years, and I made an appointment for the following Monday. I called my attorney and made a separate appointment. Then I sat back down at the kitchen table, picked up my phone, and typed back to Kieran. Okay, I understand. Take care of yourselves. That was all. The Monday appointments were productive. I want to be precise here because the details matter. I revised my will, my estate, the house, my retirement accounts, a moderate portfolio of investments built over 30 years of careful saving, had previously been structured to pass to Kieran and upon his death to Poppy. I didn't remove Poppy. I would never remove Poppy, but I restructured things so that a significant portion, the amount I had previously earmarked for Kieran directly, was redirected into a trust administered for Poppy's benefit. Education, medical, eventual housing assistance, all protected, all accessible to her at 25. Kieran would not control it. I also reviewed the pattern of financial gifts I had given over the past several years, not to calculate some debt I expected to be repaid. That's not what this was. But because I had a sense, sitting in Paul's office, that I had been quietly subsidizing something while asking nothing in return, not even a seat at the table, not even a visit without a scheduled slot. I stopped the automatic monthly transfers I had been making into a joint account Kieran, and I set up when he first moved, a leftover habit from the college contribution days that had never formally ended. $200 a month, not a lot. But it was mine, and I stopped it. I also made one more decision, one that had nothing to do with money. I signed up for a woodworking class on Tuesday evenings at the community center in town. I don't know why woodworking specifically, maybe because Diane always said she wanted an Adirondack chair for the back porch, and I never built one. I signed up, and I bought the supplies, and I went the first Tuesday and the Tuesday after that, and by the end of the month I was starting to understand how to join two pieces of wood so they hold. I did not call Kieran. I did not check in. I did not, as I might have done before, send a photograph of the lawn I'd reseeded, or ask how Poppy was sleeping, or forward an article I thought he'd find interesting. I gave him the peace he asked for, completely, without caveat. The first call came 11 weeks later. It was a Thursday morning, early, and I was on my second cup of coffee, and halfway through a crossword, when my phone lit up with Kieran's name. I looked at it for 2 full rings before I answered. Dad. Dad. His voice was different. Not broken exactly, but stripped of something. The professional smoothness he'd developed over the years. The Charlotte realtor voice I used to think of it was gone. Hey, Kieran. Did you? He stopped. Started again. Paul called me, your financial advisor. He needed a signature from you on an old joint account to close it out. That's standard. He mentioned you'd updated your estate documents. That's also standard. I hadn't reviewed them in 4 years. There was a pause. I didn't fill it. Dad, can I come up this weekend? I said yes, not because I was looking for the moment of confrontation, not because I wanted to watch him understand what had changed. I said yes because he was my son, and because even when someone hurts you, that doesn't stop being true. He arrived on Saturday around noon alone. Renata didn't come, and he didn't explain that, and I didn't ask. He looked tired in the specific way that has nothing to do with sleep. We sat on the back porch with iced tea, and he looked out at the yard for a while without saying anything. "You built something," he finally said, nodding toward the corner of the yard where the Adirondack chair sat in progress, half-finished, angles still rough. "Working on it." He nodded. Then, "I'm sorry about the text." I waited. Renata and I had been arguing about, it doesn't matter. She felt like we didn't have enough room to breathe, and I was agreeing with everything she said instead of saying what I actually thought. He turned his glass in his hands. "I shouldn't have sent it the way I did. I should have called." "Yes," I said, "you should have." "I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that you helped us. With the house and with the car and all of it. But I think I'd stopped actually thinking about it, like it was just there. Like you were just there. And somehow that made it easier to push back instead of—" He stopped again. "I don't know. That doesn't make sense." "It makes sense," I said. And it did. I understood exactly how that happened because I had watched it happen, incident by incident, year by year. When something is always present, you stop seeing it. You start treating it as a feature of the landscape rather than a choice someone made over and over on your behalf. "I looked at our bank account," he said. "The transfer stopped." "Yes." "And the will." "Poppy is taken care of," I said. "That will never change." "But I reorganized things, yes." He looked at me then. Not angry, that's what I want you to understand. Not accusatory. He looked at me the way he used to look at me when he was 12, and something had happened at school, and he was trying to figure out how to start the conversation. Like he was standing at a door and didn't know which way it opened. "Are we okay?" he asked. I thought about that for a moment. I thought about the lawn I'd reseeded, and the crosswords on Thursday mornings, and the woodworking class on Tuesday evenings, and the quiet, full life I had been living these past 11 weeks. I thought about how the house wasn't lonely anymore so much as settled. I thought about what I wanted the next chapter of my relationship with my son to actually look like. Not what I had been accepting, not the scheduled calls and the video chat on December 26th, but something real. "I want to see Poppy," I said, "not on a schedule, not because it's been cleared in advance. I want to be her grandfather, which means sometimes I show up with peaches and sometimes I don't. And either way, I'm welcome." "Okay. And I want you to talk to me, not the version of you that runs everything through Renata's filter first. You, the way you used to." He was quiet for a while. "That's fair," he said. Then, "She's not a bad person, Dad. She's just—" "I know," I said. "I know she's not." We sat on the back porch until the late afternoon, when the light turned that particular gold it gets in October in the Carolinas, and we talked more than we had in probably 3 years. Not about money, not about arrangements or schedules or territories. Just about things. His work, which was harder than he let on. A neighborhood dispute that had turned funny in hindsight. A book he was reading about the history of American infrastructure. He'd started it because he thought of me. Before he left, he walked over to the half-built chair in the corner of the yard and looked at it for a while. "Can I help you finish it sometime?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You can." "I'm not going to tell you everything is perfect now because that's not how life works, and I've been around long enough to know that clean endings are mostly for movies. Renata and I will always have a certain careful distance between us. There are still Thanksgivings I don't get invited to. There are still moments where I can tell he's measuring his words against what she might say later. But Poppy calls me on Saturday mornings now, from the iPad Kieran set up in her room. She tells me about things. Which kid in her class has the best backpack? What animal she thinks would make a good mayor? Whether clouds have feelings. Last month I drove down to Charlotte on a Wednesday, no occasion, no advanced scheduling, and I sat in the kitchen while Renata made dinner and Kieran helped Poppy with a puzzle at the coffee table. It wasn't seamless. But I was there. The Adirondack chair is finished. It's on the back porch now, where Diane always wanted it. Some evenings I sit in it and watch the light change over the lawn. I reseated, and I think about what it cost me to be useful to people without requiring anything from them in return. I think about how easy it is to confuse being needed with being loved. I know the difference now, and I'd rather be loved. The chair is finished now. It sits on the back porch where Diane always wanted one. And some evenings I go out there with a cup of coffee and just watch the yard settle into dusk. It's a quiet thing, a small thing, but I built it with my own hands, and that matters to me in a way I didn't fully expect. I've been thinking a lot about what actually happened over these past few years, not the text message, not the phone call, not even the conversation on the back porch that Saturday afternoon. I mean the longer arc of it, the way things unravel slowly, so slowly you don't notice until you're standing in the backyard holding your phone, and something inside you goes very still. I give generously. I don't regret that. But somewhere along the way I confused giving with earning my place. I thought that if I was useful enough, available enough, financially present enough, I would also be emotionally welcome. That's not how it works. You can't buy your way into being valued. And the moment I stopped making myself indispensable, the moment I said okay and meant it, and turned back to the lawn and the grass seed and the life I had in front of me, everything shifted. Not because I punished anyone, but because I finally stopped punishing myself by accepting less than I deserved. What Kieran had to learn, and I think he's learning it still, is that integrity isn't just about the big moments. It's not just about whether you show up when things are hard. It's about the 1,000 small choices you make when things are comfortable. Whether you stay honest when honesty costs you something, whether you treat the people who love you with the same care you'd give a colleague or a neighbor. He's a good man. I believe that. But good men can still drift when they stop paying attention to their own moral compass, and a strong marriage to someone with a clear sense of territory can quietly reorient you away from your own people without you even noticing it's happening. And here's the thing about wisdom that I've come to understand late in life: it doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates. It comes from sitting with discomfort instead of fixing it immediately. It comes from recognizing that your first instinct, in my case, to call, to smooth things over, to make myself useful again, isn't always the right one. I had to be still long enough to see clearly. That took more discipline than anything I did in 31 years of engineering. What I'm most grateful for, looking back, is that I didn't harden. I stayed open. To Kieran, to Poppy's Saturday morning calls, to the imperfect but real afternoon in their kitchen last month. Staying open when you've been hurt isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength there is. It means you keep showing up, not from desperation or habit, but from a deliberate choice to remain the kind of person you want to be. I know the difference now between being needed and being loved. I'd rather be loved. And I hope, Kieran is starting to understand that the two things don't have to be at odds.